You know what the actual sound of national security is? It isn't a siren, and it sure as hell isn't the clicking of a gun slide like they show in the movies. It's the hum of an oversized server room cooling fan and the scratch of a cheap, government-issued Bic pen on a logbook that nobody reads until the world ends. I've spent 22 years listening to that hum. I'm Allison. I'm the person who makes sure the doors lock, the badges work, and that when a convoy of black subs rolls up to a research facility in Maryland, the people inside don't walk into a disaster. I'm a glorified babysitter with Yankee white clearance and a mortgage I can barely tolerate. I work, or worked, at a Tier 1 research facility. We handle things that don't have names yet, mostly tech that the Pentagon wants to play with in 5 years. My job title was agent in charge of site logistics and security, which is fancy government speak for the woman who fixes everything while the men take credit. In my line of work, if you do your job perfectly, you are invisible. If a vice president visits and nobody gets shot, nobody trips over a cable, and nobody leaks a photo of him eating a bagel, I don't get a handshake. I get ignored. That's the deal. You trade your soul for a pension and the quiet satisfaction of knowing you're the only adult in the room. Real quick, before I tell you how I watched a government career implode in real time, hit subscribe and maybe drop a like. It fuels my caffeine addiction and keeps me from screaming into a pillow. We good? Okay, back to the bureaucracy. The problem with being invisible is that people forget you're structural. They think you're just wallpaper. Enter Director Bradley. Brad was a political appointee, a man whose resume was written in Comic Sans and smelled like desperation and expensive cologne. Brad didn't know the difference between a secure compartmentalized information facility, SIF, and a broom closet, but he knew how to smile for LinkedIn photos. He looked at security protocols the way a toddler looks at vegetables, an annoyance to be pushed off the plate. For the last 6 months, Brad had been shadowing me, not to learn, but to critique. He'd stand in the corner of my office, sipping a kale smoothie that cost more than my hourly rate, and ask questions like, do we really need physical logs? Can't we just put this on the cloud? The cloud isn't authorized for this level of intel, Brad, I'd say, not looking up from my monitors. And unless you want the Chinese government reading our lunch orders, we stick to the hard lines. He'd sigh, the heavy, dramatic sigh of a visionary being held back by a dinosaur. So analog, Allison, we need to be agile. We need to pivot. I hate the word pivot. It usually means break something that works. Then the nephew appeared. Greg. Imagine a golden retriever that learned how to mine Bitcoin and vape at the same time. That was Greg. He was 24, wore sneakers that looked like spaceships, and had a certificate in cybersecurity awareness from a website that probably steals your credit card info. Brad introduced him as a consultant. Greg is going to help us streamline, Brad said, beaming like he'd just invented fire. Greg looked at my bank of monitors, feeds from 72 cameras, thermal sensors, and perimeter alarms and said, whoa, can we get this on an iPad? I feel like I could gamify this. My soul left my body. It packed a bag, took the Amtrak to Philly, and never came back. Security isn't a game, Greg, I said, my voice flat. It's a series of redundancies designed to prevent catastrophe. Vibes are low in here, Greg whispered to his uncle. I should have known then. I should have seen the writing on the wall. It wasn't graffiti. It was a termination notice written in invisible ink. I kept doing my job, though. Just last week, we had a soft probe, DHS testing our perimeter. I spotted their fake delivery van 3 miles out because the suspension was riding too low for a floral delivery. I locked the site down before they even put the vehicle in park. Brad was annoyed. You caused a traffic jam, Allison. My lunch delivery was late. I stopped a federal penetration test, Brad. You're too tense. You need to vibe more. I didn't know that vibing was a job requirement, but apparently it was ranking higher than active top-secret clearance. I sat in my office, a windowless box that smelled of ozone and floor wax, and looked at the calendar. I had a feeling. You develop a sixth sense in this job. It's like the feeling you get right before a thunderstorm, or right before you realize the milk in your coffee was chunky. The air felt heavy. Greg was wandering the halls with a tablet, tapping at things. I caught him trying to bypass the biometric scanner on the server room door. It's too slow, he complained when I confronted him. It takes like 6 seconds to read my retina. I could code a workaround. If you code a workaround, I said, leaning in close enough to smell the Red Bull on his breath, I will have you arrested for violating the Espionage Act. Do not touch my doors. He ran to Brad. Of course he did. I went back to my desk and stared at the blinking cursor. I was tired, not sleep tired, soul tired. I was tired of explaining to grown men why they couldn't prop open the back door to let the pizza guy in. I was tired of being the bad guy because I followed the laws that kept them out of prison. I didn't know it yet, but that was my last full day of feeling responsible. The axe was already falling. It was swinging down in slow motion, shiny and sharp, guided by the hands of a man who thought security was just an app you download. And honestly, I was about to let it hit me. Because sometimes, the only way to show someone that they're standing on a trapdoor is to pull the lever. The next morning, the summons came. A calendar invite titled Quick Sync popped up on my screen at 8:45 a.m. for a 9 a.m. meeting. In the corporate world, Quick Sync is code for execution. If they wanted to talk about budget or schedules, they'd call it a review. Sync means you're about to be unsynced from the payroll. I walked into Brad's office. It was the only room in the building with a real window. It had a view of the parking lot and the Maryland tree line. Greg was there, sitting in one of the leather guest chairs, spinning it back and forth with his foot. He was wearing a hoodie that said "Disrupt" across the chest. The irony was almost physical. Brad didn't look at me. He was rearranging a stack of papers that I knew were blank. It's a power move. Allison, have a seat. Close the door. I sat. I didn't close the door. I left it cracked 3 inches. Another power move. Allison. Brad started putting on his serious face. It looked like he was trying to solve a math problem while passing a kidney stone. We've been looking at the metrics. The facility is evolving. The nature of threats is changing. It's all cyber now, digital frontiers. We house physical prototypes of ballistic missile guidance systems, Brad, I said. You can't hack a crate of hardware if someone just walks in and steals it. See, that's that old school thinking, Greg chimed in. Not looking up from his phone, everything is data. Matter is just like slow energy. I stared at him. I wondered if I could legally classify him as a safety hazard. The point is, Brad interrupted, we're restructuring the security division. We need a fresh perspective, someone who speaks the language of the future. Greg here has just finished an intensive boot camp in full-stack security management. It was 6 weeks, Greg said proudly. Online. Allison, Brad continued, finally looking me in the eye. You're overqualified for the direction we're going. Your methods are heavy, expensive, we need agile, we need lean. You're firing me, I said. It wasn't a question. We're releasing you to pursue new opportunities, Brad corrected, effective immediately. We'll pay out your contract, of course. 2 weeks severance. 2 weeks, 22 years of service. I had missed my father's funeral because of a lockdown at this facility. I had missed my best friend's wedding because the vice president decided to do a surprise tour. I had given this building my life and they were offering me 2 weeks of pay and a kick out the door. I felt a heat rise in my chest, hot and sharp, like swallowing a lit cigarette. But on the outside, I was ice. This is what training does. When the alarm bells ring, you don't panic, you assess. Okay, I said. Brad blinked. He was expecting a fight. He wanted a fight so he could call security, my security staff, to escort me out. He wanted the drama to validate his decision. Just, okay, if that's the decision, I said, standing up. Who is the acting agent in charge? Who holds the clearance? Greg is taking over, Brad said, puffing out his chest. I looked at Greg. Greg was trying to balance a pencil on his nose. Does Greg have Yankee white clearance? I asked. Does he have his Tier 1 background check completed by the DoD? I have a background check from my apartment complex, Greg said. I'm clean, bro. We're fast-tracking the paperwork. Brad waved his hand dismissively. It's just red tape, Allison. You worry too much about the forms. Greg has the app access, that's what matters. I stood there for a second looking at them. I looked at the live, laugh, lead poster on Brad's wall. I looked at the dying succulent on his desk. And I realized something. I didn't have to warn them. I wasn't legally required to tell them that you can't fast-track a Yankee white clearance. It takes months. It involves men in suits interviewing your third-grade teacher. Without it, you are legally not allowed to be the point of contact for anything higher than a sanitation truck. But more importantly, I realized that if I warned them, they would just blame me when it went wrong anyway. They'd say I sabotaged the transition. All right, I said, I'll clear my desk. Leave your badge and keys on the table, Brad said. Greg will walk you out. I know the way, I said. I walked back to my office. The hallway felt longer than usual. My staff, guards I had hired, trained, and shared coffee with looked at me. They knew. News travels faster than light in a secure facility. Jerry, the shift supervisor, looked like he wanted to say something, but I gave him a small shake of the head. Stay down, Jerry. Don't catch a bullet for a corpse. I walked into my office and started putting my life into a cardboard box. A photo of my cat, a stress ball shaped like a grenade, my favorite mug that said I see dumb people, and then I saw it. My monitor was still on. My Outlook was open. And right there, flashing in the corner, was a calendar reminder I had set 6 months ago. A reminder for a logistics drill that was classified so highly, it wasn't even on the main server. It was local only. Confirm motorcade, ETA Tuesday 10:45 a.m. Today was Monday. The drill wasn't just a drill. It was a red ball event. A full-scale Secret Service walkthrough pretending to be a presidential visit, designed to test the facility's readiness for a POTUS emergency shelter situation. It involved the actual Secret Service advance team. It involved the presidential motorcade logistics. And the only person confirmed to receive them, the only person with the clearance code to verify the agents so they didn't storm the building with guns drawn, was the agent in charge. Me. I looked at the screen. I looked at the sent items folder. I had confirmed the date 3 weeks ago. Brad wasn't copied on it because Brad didn't have the clearance to know the specific dates of red ball drills. I hovered my mouse over the forward button. I could send this to Brad. I could write, hey, heads up. Secret Service is invading tomorrow, make sure Greg wears pants. I looked at the box of my stuff. I thought about 2 weeks severance. I thought about matter as just slow energy. I selected the email. I hit forward. I typed in my personal email address. I hit send. Then I deleted the calendar event from the work Outlook. I emptied the deleted items folder. I picked up my box. I walked out of the office. I dropped my badge on the reception desk. "Have a nice life," I whispered to the empty lobby. The air conditioning hummed back at me. It sounded like a chuckle. Driving home at 11 o'clock a.m. on a Monday feels illegal. The sun hits the dashboard differently when you're unemployed. I stopped at a liquor store and bought a bottle of expensive bourbon, the kind I usually save for election years, and a bag of spicy pork rinds. A celebration of mediocrity. My phone buzzed. It was Jerry, my shift supervisor. Text from Jerry, they just gave Greg the master override codes. He wrote them on a sticky note and put it on his monitor. "We're doomed." I didn't reply. I couldn't. Responding would be interference. I was a civilian now. Civilians don't worry about master override codes. Civilians worry about daytime television and what to cook for dinner. I got home, poured a glass of the bourbon, and opened my laptop. I pulled up the email I had forwarded to myself. I needed to look at it one more time to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Subject, FWD. Operation Ironclad Logistics Walkthrough from, redacted at USDHS.gov to, Allison Security Lead Body, Agent in Charge, confirm readiness for Tier 1 Advanced Team arrival. Tuesday, 14 Dec, 1045 hours. Protocol, Yankee White verify only. No deputies, no proxies. Failure to produce cleared POV will result in immediate site scrubbing and compliance audit. Confirm receipt. I took a sip of bourbon. It burned, but in a good way. Let me explain what Yankee White means for those of you who don't speak Beltway. It's the golden ticket. It's the clearance required to work directly with the president or vice president. It involves a background check, so deep they probably know what I dreamed about in 1998. It takes months to get. You can't transfer it. You can't act in it. If you don't have it, you don't exist to the Secret Service. Tomorrow at 10:45 a.m., agents from the Presidential Protective Division were going to walk into that lobby. They weren't coming to chat. They were coming to secure a location for the leader of the free world. They would expect to be met by me. Instead, they were going to be met by Greg. Greg, who thought the cloud was a magical place where Data lived happily ever after. Greg, who was currently vibing in my office. I imagined the scene. I closed my eyes and let it play out like a movie. Brad would be in his office, probably planning a synergy lunch. Greg would be messing with the badge printer. And then, the knock on the door, not a polite knock. The kind of knock that shakes the frame. I felt a twinge of guilt, not for Brad or Greg, screw them, but for Jerry and the rest of the team. They were going to be in the splash zone, but I knew Jerry. Jerry was a pro. He'd see the suits, he'd see the earpieces, and he'd go mute. He'd know the drill. Name, rank, serial number, and point to the boss. I checked my severance agreement. Paragraph 4, Section B. The employee agrees to return all company property and cease all access to company systems immediately upon termination. I had ceased access. I had returned the property. I was following the contract to the letter. If I had called them to warn them, I would technically be violating the cease all access clause. I was just being a good, compliant ex-employee. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing things I hadn't done in years. I watered my plants. I organized my spice rack. I watched a documentary about penguins. It was fascinating. The penguins just marched into the freezing wind, head down, surviving purely on instinct. They reminded me of government workers, only better dressed. Night fell. The facility would be on night mode now. Usually I'd check the logs from my phone before bed. Just a quick glance to make sure the perimeter sensors were green. Tonight, my phone was a brick. No access, no responsibility. I wondered if Greg knew how to arm the night alarm. There was a specific sequence. Panel A, confirm. Panel B, confirm. Toggle switch, enter code. If you did it wrong, the silent alarm tripped and the local police would show up. At 2 o'clock a.m., I woke up to a siren in the distance. I smiled, rolled over, and went back to sleep. It wasn't my siren. Tuesday morning, the day of reckoning. I woke up at 7 o'clock a.m. without an alarm. Old habits die hard. My body wanted to put on a blazer and drive into traffic. My brain said, no, we are eating pancakes today. I made coffee, good coffee. Not the sludge from the break room machine that tasted like burnt plastic and despair. I sat on my porch. The air was crisp. It was a beautiful day for a federal incident. Meanwhile, 10 miles away, I knew exactly what was happening. Based on Jerry's text from the night before, which I had read but not answered, Greg had decided to modernize the entry protocols. Apparently, Greg didn't like the physical sign-in sheets. Paper is for boomers, he had probably said. So, he replaced the reception log with a tablet kiosk. A tablet that required Wi-Fi. In a building with signal jammers in the lobby. Genius. I could picture the line of frustrated scientists trying to swipe their badges on a screen that was endlessly buffering. Brad would be walking past, smiling, saying, growing pains, everyone. Disruption leads to innovation. At 9 o'clock a.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, another call. Same number, voicemail. Then a text from Brad. Text, Allison, quick question. The badge system is acting weird. What's the admin password? The one on the sticky note isn't working. I stared at the text. The audacity. He fired me, insulted my career, and now wanted tech support? I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I poured more syrup on my pancakes. The clock ticked. 9:30 a.m., 10 o'clock a.m. The Secret Service advance team is never late. If they say 10:45, they mean they are parking at 10:40 and entering the door at 10:45:00. They operate on a timeline that makes atomic clocks look sloppy. They would be in stage 1 movement now, leaving the field office. Black Chevys, tinted windows, plates that don't register in the DMV database. 2 agents in the lead car, 2 in the trail car. Maybe a K9 unit if they were feeling thorough. They would have the site profile on a tablet. That profile would list point of contact. Allison last name Ayek. They wouldn't know about Greg. The Secret Service database updates slowly. Personnel changes at Tier 1 sites require a Form SF-86 update, which takes weeks to process. As far as the us was concerned, I was still the gatekeeper. 10:15 a.m. I imagined Greg sitting in my chair. He'd probably adjusted the height so his feet dangled. He was likely playing a game on his phone, oblivious to the fact that a Category 5 hurricane of federal authority was barreling down Route 95 towards him. I washed my dishes. I dried them by hand. I felt a strange sense of peace. It was the peace of a demolition expert who has set the charges, walked away, and is now just waiting for the thump. The thing about going digital is that it removes the human element. Brad and Greg thought that was a feature. They were about to learn it was a bug. When the Secret Service arrives, they don't want an app. They don't want a QR code. They want a human being with a badge that says, "I am authorized to know you are here." If they get a QR code instead, they assume the site is compromised. 10:30 a.m. I sat down in my living room chair. I didn't have a camera feed, but I didn't need one. I knew the acoustics of that lobby. I knew how the glass doors rattled when opened forcefully. I knew how the receptionist, Linda, would squeak when she saw a badge that wasn't a standard visitor pass. I took a deep breath. "Showtime," I whispered. "Let's reconstruct the crime scene, shall we?" At 10:42 a.m., a convoy of 3 black SUVs turned off the main road and approached the facility gate. The gate guard, a guy named Mike who I'd hired because he was an ex-Marine who didn't smile, would have stopped them. "Mike, ID. Lead agent," flashes a badge that doesn't just say federal agent. It says United States Secret Service Presidential Protective Division. Mike, knowing the drill because I trained him, would have immediately hit the button to open the gate and reached for the landline to call the agent in charge. Mike calls my old desk extension. Ring, ring, ring. Greg wouldn't answer. He'd be listening to a podcast about cryptocurrency. Or maybe he disconnected the landline because phones are archaic. Mike, sweating now, waves the convoy through because you do not hold up the PPD. He assumes the AIC me knows they are coming. The convoy rolls up to the main entrance. They don't park in the visitor spots. They park on the curb, right in the fire lane. Engines running. 10:45 a.m. 4 men and 2 women exit the vehicles. They are wearing suits that cost more than Greg's car. They are wearing earpieces. They are not smiling. They are moving with a terrifying fluidity like water flowing uphill. They are scanning the roof, the windows, the bushes. They enter the lobby. The lobby of our facility is designed to be intimidating. High ceilings, marble floors, security glass. But these people walk in like they own the concrete the building sits on. Linda, receptionist, looks up. "Can I help?" Why? Federal agents, the lead agent barks. "Let's call him Agent Miller. We are here for the scheduled site advance." "Where's the agent in charge?" Linda freezes. She looks at the iPad kiosk Greg installed. Please sign in on the tablet." Agent Miller looks at the tablet like it's a dead rat. "I'm not signing a tablet." "Where's Allison? We have a 10:45 verify." "Allison doesn't work here anymore," Linda whispers. Air in the lobby drops 20 degrees. The agents stop moving. They go into statue mode. This is a defense mechanism. They are assessing if they need to draw weapons or evacuate. "Who is in charge of site security?" Miller asks, his voice dangerously low. "Greg," Linda says. He's in the back. Get him now." Linda scrambles for the phone. She pages the overhead system. "Greg to the lobby. Greg to the lobby immediately. Now, picture this." Greg hears his name. He thinks, "Cool, my DoorDash is here." He saunters out of the back office. He's wearing his Disrupt hoodie. He's holding a half-eaten bagel. He is not wearing a badge. He walks into the lobby, sees 6 people in dark suits, and stops. He probably thinks they are investors, or maybe the FBI, which would be cool in his mind. "Sup?" Greg says. "I'm Greg, head of security." Agent Miller stares at him. He looks at the hoodie. He looks at the bagel. Looks at the sneakers. "You are the agent in charge?" Miller asks. "Yeah, man, taking things in a new direction. Digital first, you know?" Greg bites the bagel. Miller taps his earpiece. "Command, we have a discrepancy at the primary entry point. AIC is missing. Subject is unidentified male." "Whoa, unidentified?" Greg laughs. "I'm the director's nephew, bro. Check the app." Sir Miller says, stepping forward. "I need to see your Yankee White credentials." "Now." Greg blinks. "I what?" And there it is. The moment the universe snaps. The moment gravity reverses. "Yankee White," Miller repeats. "Tier 1 clearance. Do you hold it?" "I have a certificate in cloud safety," Greg offers. Miller turns to his team. "Secure the doors. Nobody in, nobody out. Get the site director out here." The agents fan out. One of them stands in front of the door. Another moves behind the reception desk. Linda is hyperventilating. Greg drops his bagel. "Wait, is this a prank? Did Brad hire actors?" "Oh, Greg, if only it were actors. Actors have unions. These people have immunity." Brad comes into the lobby looking annoyed. He's adjusting his tie, ready to lecture whoever is causing a scene. He sees the agents. He sees Greg looking like a kicked puppy. He sees the lobby locked down. His face changes from annoyed manager to confused politician. What is the meaning of this? Brad demands. I am the director of this facility. Can't just barge in here. Agent Miller turns to him. Miller has eyes that look like they've seen the end of the world and found it boring. Director, we are the United States Secret Service. We are executing a pre-planned advance for POTUS contingency site. Your facility confirmed readiness. POTUS? Brad pales. The President, we don't use titles, Miller says. We need the cleared contact. Your receptionist says Allison is gone. We let her go, Brad says. Trying to regain some height. We're restructuring. Greg is the new lead. Miller looks at Greg. Greg is trying to become invisible against the beige wall. Director, Miller says, his voice devoid of all emotion. Does this individual possess active Yankee white clearance? He's in the process. Brad stammers. We submitted the forms. We're agile. We can authorize him right now. I authorize him. Miller actually laughs. It's a dry, terrifying sound. We don't authorize Yankee white, Director. The Department of Defense authorizes it. The FBI vets it. The White House signs it. Without it, this individual cannot be in the same room as the protectee. He cannot know the protectee is coming. Hell, he isn't even supposed to know I'm here, but we have an app, Greg squeaks. Miller ignores him. He steps closer to Brad. You have a Tier 1 facility without a cleared security lead. You confirmed a Secret Service advance without having the personnel to handle it. Do you understand what you have done? I didn't know about the visit, Brad whispers, because you don't have the clearance to know, Miller says. Allison did. The silence in the lobby is heavy. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear a career die. Where is she? Miller asks. She's at home, Brad says. Call her, Miller orders. She blocked my number, Brad admits. Miller stares at him. You fired the only person with the keys to the kingdom, and you didn't ensure a handover of classified protocols? It was a pivot, Brad says weakly. Command, Miller speaks into his wrist mic. Scrub the site. Repeat, scrub the site. We have a compromise. The location is unsecured. The chain of custody is broken. Abort the movement. Abort, Brad asks. Wait, you can't just cancel. This is bad PR. Miller gets in Brad's face. Director, I am declaring this facility a security risk. I am flagging your credentials for immediate review. Nobody enters this building until a containment team clears it. You are not worried about PR right now. You are worried about federal indictment for negligence. Indictment? Brad's knees actually buckle. He grabs the reception desk for support. Get everyone into the conference room, Miller barks at his team. Confiscate all electronics. We need to wipe the logs. My iPad, Greg cries out. My crypto wallet is on there. Seize it, Miller says. An agent rips the tablet out of Greg's hands. I wasn't there, obviously, but I know this happened because Jerry told me later. Jerry said it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He said Brad looked like a man trying to hold back a tsunami with a spoon. And me, I was at home starting a puzzle. It was a picture of a lighthouse, standing tall against a storm. Fitting. Scrub order isn't like cleaning a kitchen. In the world of high-level security, a scrub means the site is burned. It means the Secret Service has determined that the location is no longer trusted. It's a black mark that never washes off. The agents moved through the building. They weren't polite. They ordered scientists away from their desks. They unplugged servers. They demanded hard logs. Where are the visitor logs for the last 30 days? An agent asked Greg. It's on the cloud, bro. The app, Greg cried. We cannot audit the cloud right now, the agent snapped. We need paper trails. Who entered this building on November 12th? I don't know. The API was down that day. Strike 2. In Brad's office, Miller was on the phone with Washington. Yeah, total foobar, Miller said. The director is a civilian with no grasp of protocol. The security lead is I don't even know what he is. A child. Yeah, we're pulling out. Flagged the site as red. Brad was sitting in his chair, head in his hands. I can fix this, he mumbled. We just need to explain the synergy. Director, Miller said, hanging up the phone. There's no synergy. You breached contract. This facility operates on a DoD grant contingent on maintaining Tier 1 security standards. You just lost that rating. I lost the grant? Brad looked up, eyes wide. The grant was his salary. The grant was the budget. You didn't just lose it, Miller said. You set it on fire. Meanwhile, the staff was in the cafeteria, guarded by an agent. Jerry texts me again, hidden phone. Text, they are seizing hard drives. Greg is crying. He literally asked if he could call his mom. The agent told him to sit down and shut up. I love you, Allison. Marry me? I chuckled. The chaos continued for hours. The Secret Service doesn't just leave. They document the failure. They took photos of the unsecured doors. They took photos of the sticky note with the passwords. They took photos of Greg's disrupt hoodie. They built a case file titled Gross Negligence and Failure of Command. By 2:00 p.m., the visit that never happened was over. The motorcade had turned around miles ago. The president, or whoever was the principal, went to the backup site. The facility was left in shambles. Brad tried to leave his office. I need to call legal. You sit there, Miller said. DHS Internal Affairs is on their way. You wait for them. Internal Affairs, the two scariest words in government employment. And that's when the realization hit Brad. He looked at the empty chair where I used to sit during meetings. He realized that for 22 years, he had never had a visit form Internal Affairs. He had never had a scrub order. He had never had a breach because I was there. Allison, he whispered. Why didn't she tell me? Because you fired her. Miller said, overhearing him. And knowing her file, she's a by-the-book operator. She followed your instructions to the letter. She left. Miller looked at Brad with pure disgust. You fired the guard dog and were surprised when the wolves got in. The next few days were a blur of bureaucratic violence. When the Secret Service files a report saying a site is compromised due to administrative incompetence, things happen fast. The Office of Personnel Management, OPM, descended like locusts. They interviewed everyone. They interviewed Linda. They interviewed Jerry. They interviewed the janitor. Did you know Greg? Yeah, the director's nephew. He played games on his iPad mostly. Did he conduct security sweeps? He flew a drone down the hallway once. It crashed into the fire alarm. It was a massacre. They pulled Allison's file, my file. They looked for dirt. They wanted to see if I was complicit. What they found was 22 years of perfect reviews. Commendations, a flawless audit trail. Then they pulled the termination paperwork. Reason for termination, restructuring/cultural fit. Replacement, Greg last name. Qualifications, 6-week online course. The OPM investigator, a woman named Sharon who looked like she ate nails for breakfast, sat down with Brad. Director, Sharon said. Fired a GS-14 equivalent with Yankee white clearance and replaced her with? Your nephew? He showed promise, Brad said, sweating through his third shirt of the day. He is unclearable, Sharon said. He has debts. He has online gambling activity. He posted a photo of the secure server room on Instagram with the caption, blinking lights go BRRR. He is a walking national security risk. I didn't know, Brad said. Because you didn't run the background check. Sharon said because you bypassed protocol. Greg was escorted out of the building on Wednesday. He didn't get a box. He was told to leave his disrupt hoodie. He left crying, blaming the haters. Brad was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. That's code for you're done, but we need time to print the paperwork. On Thursday, I got a call. Allison speaking. This is Deputy Director Vance, DHS. Hello, sir. We've had an incident at your former site. I heard there was some traffic, I said, looking at my nails. We need you back, Vance said. The site is red. We need someone to recertify it. We need someone the Secret Service trusts. I took a sip of my tea. I'm sorry, sir. I'm currently exploring new opportunities. I was told my methods were too analog. Allison, cut the crap. Brad is an idiot. He's gone. We'll offer you a reinstatement. Plus 10%. No, I said. Silence on the line. No. I don't want to go back there, I said. The culture isn't a good fit, but I hear the Regional Compliance Office has an opening for director, overseeing multiple sites, making sure protocols are followed. Vance sighed. He knew I had him. You want the regional gig? It seems like a role where my heavy methods would be appreciated. Fine, Vance said. Come in Monday. We'll write it up. And Vance, yeah, make sure Brad knows. I didn't go back to the facility. I went to the headquarters in D.C. My new office has a window, a real one overlooking the Potomac. My first act as Regional Director of Compliance was to review the audit of my old site. I read through the carnage, the missed logs, the app disaster. The Secret Service report simply read, site unsecured due to leadership failure. Brad was officially terminated for gross misconduct and violation of federal hiring practices. He lost his pension. He lost his clearance. He is currently working as a consultant for a startup that makes smart water bottles. It seems like a better fit. Greg? Well, Greg is probably still on TikTok talking about how the government couldn't handle his energy. I sat at my new desk. The hum was different here. It was quieter, more efficient. I opened my email. I had one loose end to tie up. I composed a new message. Brad X Director personal email from Allison Regional Dire Subject. Clearance review follow-up. Brad, I reviewed your file as part of the regional cleanup. Just a friendly reminder for your next role. Clearance cannot be inherited. It cannot be disrupted. And it certainly cannot be replaced by an app. Also, you owe me 2 weeks of severance. I expect the check by Friday. Best, Allison. I hit send. I leaned back in my chair. The sun was setting over the Capitol. The monuments were glowing in the distance. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. In my line of work, revenge is a dish served with proper documentation in triplicate and completely according to protocol. I took a sip of my coffee. It was still warm. My phone buzzed. It was Jerry. Text, new acting director just arrived. She asked for the paper logs. She asked for the keys. She asked where you were so she could send a thank you card. I smiled. You're welcome, I whispered to the empty room. I closed my laptop. The server room fan hummed in the distance. It sounded like music. All right, that's the file. If you enjoyed watching incompetence get crushed by the heavy boot of bureaucracy, hit that upvote. And seriously, if your boss tells you to pivot away from safety protocols, just let them and keep the receipts. Competence speaks louder than any title, and true integrity always finds its way to the surface. Allison's quiet exit, knowing what was coming, truly showed us that. Sometimes, the best way to prove your value is to simply step back and let incompetence expose itself. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.